to Aquí Soñamos. Here with Sammie, or I'm Sammie, and this is Ashley. And then we have our second guest, Lupe. Welcome.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Lupe.
Thank
I
you.
have my first in studio guest, in house guest.
Yes. We're taking turns. We're taking turns.
I know. Except we don't have any other guests lined up.
Awkward. We're not supposed to throw that out there.
I
Jeez.
know.
We'll
We'll
find
get
somebody.
somebody.
Even
No,
if
what
it's
you
a bum
say
off
is
the
we're
street.
working on something big right now.
Yeah, we're working on something really big.
Exactly. Ashley
It's
be
in the
selling us
works.
short sometimes, man. I swear. She'll be like, we only have 5 listeners. And I'm like, at least it's five, you know?
I love all of our listeners.
I do too.
All right, well, we can jump right in, right?
Okay.
Lupe,
Yeah.
our guest, our aunt.
It's a
Welcome
little
to the
weird
show.
calling me by my first
My
name.
guess.
I know. No, yeah, yeah. I know I'm always like Aunt Lupe, but then we're going to call you Lupe for the show. With
You
some
can call
respect.
her
So,
Aunt Lupe. Who cares?
Yeah.
it's okay. All right. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What made you want to be on the episode?
Okay, so I have been listening to y'all's podcast, and I've really enjoyed it. And I literally have just like in the car listening to it, and I'm like answering back, and I'm like, yeah, and this too. So I'm like, I'm part of this conversation, but nobody hears me except for me.
That's funny.
So then that first time, like I just texted Ashley and I was like, yeah, and this.
Yeah,
'Cause
with
I just
the
wanted to be a part of the conversation.
yeah with the whole people loving a fresh start
Yes.
type of deal. Because you called that, what was that called?
I don't even remember now. I've slept since
But
then.
you had an official name, an
Yeah.
official name for why people love fresh starts and a new year and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I don't even
Um,
remember now.
but yeah, so we finally got you on the show. I'm interested to hear your story because I don't know your story.
Oh, wow.
But let's jump it off. How'd you get to where you are today?
Well, so it's
Well,
kind of been an interesting. Go ahead.
Oh,
so sorry, Lupe.
It's okay.
I kind of want, what do you do now first, and then we'll talk about like how you got there. Is that
Okay,
cool?
so yeah, that's
yeah.
cool. So, in my current job, I am what's called embedded faculty. So, I am an adjunct professor, and so I teach dual credit psychology to high school students. So, at
Nice.
the school where I teach, all of our students are working towards an associate's degree
Okay.
in the medical field. And
Oh,
so,
okay.
as one of their core classes, they have to take psychology. Um, so I get to teach psychology full time. I also teach some social studies classes too, but we won't talk about those. Psychology is my passion.
Okay.
So that's what I do. I teach, and I'm embedded in a high school. So I was credentialed through a college, but then I'm technically hired in through the school district, and so they're the ones that pay me and all of that.
Nice. I love that.
How did we get there?
It has been a very long, twisty road. So years ago, when I graduated from high school, I studied theater all through high school. As a matter of fact, my senior year, I had the option of taking like 3 periods off to not have any classes, and I was like, why? I'm going to fill them with theater
Yeah.
classes. Because that summer after I graduated from high school, I was moving to California and I was going to stay with my relatives and I was going to become a movie star. Like, I was going to be the next big thing. Like, I was going to get discovered, all of that.
Uh huh.
Is that
I
where
love that.
Ashley got the bug to come out here?
No,
I don't know.
No,
This was before I even knew Ashley. But
Oh,
I didn't.
okay, okay.
See, I don't know. I don't know any of this.
so
Oh, okay, okay.
I was gonna be famous.
Mhm.
And so I would say December of my senior year in high school, we went to UNT, the University of North Texas, and we were doing some theater workshops and stuff. And one of the workshop leaders said, "Hey, did you guys know that only 1% of all actors in the United States are the ones that you see in Hollywood?" And I just sat back and I was like, "Oh, my
Yeah.
odds are really, really low." And I think that was at that point is when I realized I am not a gambler and I am not a major risk taker.
So you wanted
You
to
like to,
move?
and you like to
Yeah.
stay in the bubble.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I don't like those odds. I don't like those odds at all. But I thought, okay, maybe there's something else that I can do theater related. So when I started college, my parents, y'all, I'm dating myself. Computers were a new thing. And so my mom and dad were like, hey, you got to do something with those computers, those computer things. That's like the new technology, and that's like where you need to be. Kind of like how we tell kids cybersecurity now, like that, hey, do cybersecurity. That's the new up and coming thing. Well, computers, that was the thing. My mom was like, get some kind of a business degree. And I'm like, ugh, that sounds so boring. So anyway, I spent my first year in college as a theater major. But I didn't tell my parents.
Okay.
They thought I was a business major.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
okay.
They're probably finding this out now for the first time.
Oh.
No. So I was a theater major that first year. And then the second semester of my freshman year, I took an intro to psych class and fell in love with it. Like it was like everything just kind of clicked and fell into place for me. Like everything made sense with psychology. So I switched my major to psychology. And at that point, I did tell my mom and dad that I was going to major in psychology. And my mom was like, well, what can you do with that degree? Because it was very much like, we need you to have a career, not a job. Because like there's a difference between having a job and then having a career. So my mom was like, what kind of career can you do with that? And I was like, I don't know. There's like a lot of things you can do. I just knew that's what I wanted. So I went to school for a couple of years. The plan was to go straight through, get a master's degree and PhD. I had it all mapped out. By the age of 26, I was going to have my PhD. Of course, nothing ever goes according to plan.
Right.
Life happens. I fell in love.
Aw.
At the end of my sophomore year in not high school, college.
Okay.
And we got married. Well, we moved. We literally up and moved, got married, moved to South Carolina, and I was going to finish school once we got to South Carolina. But of course, this is the first time I've lived away from home. I've been on my own for the first time. And so like things like rent and deposits for utilities and like real world stuff that I knew nothing about kind of kicked in. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll take a semester off. And then it was like one semester turned into 2 semesters. And then it was, we want to move back to Texas. So then it was like, okay, so we're working 2 jobs so that we can save money to move back. So school just kind of fell off at that point. And then I moved back and I started working for a company, just like customer service. Again, that dreaded job that my mom and dad were always like warned me against. And one day I was sitting talking to one of the ladies and she started as a secretary at this company, like right out of high school. And so now she was like a senior level secretary, like 25 years later. And I remember sitting there that day thinking, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. Like I can't do this for the rest of my life. And so I was talking to Marcus, my husband, at one point, and I said, like, I need to go back to school. Like, I know we can't afford it. I know it's bad timing, but I just have to finish. Like, I can't keep waiting for the right time because there is no right time. Well, about that time, he told me, he's like, well, ever since I was little, I always wanted to be a firefighter. And I've been talking to some guys that he knew, and he said, and I can get into a fire department job, like with about a year's worth of training. And I was like, okay. So we sat down and we worked it all out. And I was like, hey, you can get into your dream job within the next year, but I'm still 2 years away from finishing my degree. So
this was the bachelor's degree?
This is a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Yeah, because I got married young. I was 19 when we got married. And so I was probably 21 about this point. Yeah, 21. And so I said, okay, he quit his job so he can go to school full time. And then I worked 2 jobs. And so he, got into his career. So as soon as he started the fire department, then I was like, okay, now it's my turn. I'm going to go back and finish my degree, my bachelor's degree. And I initially tried going back to the university where I initially started. But like it was too expensive, now that you're on your own and, you've got expenses and bills to pay. It's like, it's a little more difficult than when I'm living at home. Um, so I bounced around, did some classes at different universities and stuff. Took another 3 years to finally finish my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Because that way I was like, okay, that's done. Like I can say I've accomplished that first goal. And the funny thing was, is I graduated when I was 26, and there was a moment when I told myself, like, oh crap, like you're behind, like you were supposed to have your PhD by now,
Right?
And you're just now graduating with that bachelor's degree. And so got pregnant later that year, started a family, so kind of school just kind of gets pushed off. Got a job working in HR of all things, which psychology is one of those like generic degrees,
right?
It is, yeah.
Plug it in.
You can plug it anywhere. Yeah. So I got this job working in HR for a school district, which was great because it gave me some time off, right? Got some of the holidays that you wouldn't normally get in a regular setting.
And weekends.
And then, yes, well, kind of. Yes, yes, weekends.
If you bring the work home with you, or
yeah, especially during the summer. Summertime in HR for a school district is crazy. Like, it's crazy busy.
That's weird.
It makes you question your life choices at that point. Because there's so many teachers that are like leaving and you're hiring, and we were a growing school district, so we were opening all of these new schools, and so I was hiring hundreds of people, you know, within a 3 to 4 week time. So it was crazy.
Wow.
So did that for a while. Family kept growing, but there was always like that itch, I guess, in the back of my head that I'm like, I really want to get this done. Like I've always wanted to be a doctor in psychology, and I don't even know what I want to do with it. But at that point, it was just like I just want to have the degree because I said that's a goal that I've always had for myself, a dream that I've always had for myself. And so about the time that my youngest was born, so my youngest of four kids, I got laid off from my job at the school district. And I was like, oh, isn't that great? I have a newborn, a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and an 8-year-old, and now I am unemployed. And so, and we had kind of been talking about like the cost of daycare and all of that, like the cost of daycare for I call them the three littles, even though my youngest is about to be a teenager on Monday. So my daycare for the three littles was going to be like $2,500 a month. And I was like, this is just ridiculous.
Yes.
But again, being the control freak who does not like change, I was like, I don't know that I can do this. And of course, my husband is like, hey, you know what? If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. You'll be a stay-at-home mom. So ended up staying home with kids for 10 years. It was 10 or 11 years. Best experience. Very, very hard. Very, very rewarding. But when my youngest started like second grade, I said, okay, now's the time I'm going to go back and get my master's degree. Got my master's degree at home, or I did it online, which was crazy because like I lived off of McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Mocha. Like I would drop my kids off at school, loop around to the McDonald's, and they already knew that I wanted 2 large Cokes, one with ice, one without ice, and a large Mocha. Because the Coke with ice, I would drink right then and there. The one without ice was for later.
Yeah.
Because that's what kept me up all day, doing all of the reading and stuff.
Lupe,
That's crazy.
I have a question. So from the time that you graduated with your bachelor's and then your master's, how many years was that in between? That you started your master's, I mean.
Oh my gosh, you're going to make me do math. So
I know,
I graduated with my bachelor's in December of 2003.
Okay.
And then my master's degree was in November. What year was that? Holy cow. 2018. So there was
like
a huge
15
gap.
years.
15 years.
Yeah. That's a long time.
Yeah, there was a 15-year gap.
That's crazy.
And it was, even when I started, I was like, should I even do this? Like, I'm already late. Like, I'm going to be old. Like, everybody else is like straight out of college, their bachelor's degree.
Okay, so I have a question because you're currently pursuing your PhD.
Not yet. I'm starting in the fall.
Okay, but
yay! We love it. Oh my God, it's so crazy. Good luck. But, oh my God.
I try not to think about it because if I think about it too much, then I'll talk myself out.
Yeah.
of it.
So the last guest, which I don't know if it was the last episode you listened to, she said that whenever she went back to school, just a few years in between, she felt like she lost the skill of studying, of stuff like that. So like, what did it feel like for you? I don't know the ages, and you don't have to like put the age to it, but like after 15 years from bachelor's to starting a master's, like, did you feel like you had to like completely start from the beginning as far as like studying and stuff like
And
that?
then
Okay,
she's
so here's go
sorry.
ahead, sorry.
And then she's starting a master's online, right? Your master's was online
Yeah,
as well? That's
yeah.
a
And at
whole
the end of
different
my
ballgame.
Well, and at the end of my bachelor's degree, I took a couple of online classes because then it was new. It was like a new thing to do.
Right.
And I didn't have a good experience because it was just a lot of busy work,
Yeah.
right, for those classes in my bachelor's degree. So doing an entire master's degree online just, but again, where I was in life, and as a mom, like I had to put the needs of my family first
Right.
while also navigating my own career. And
Right.
so I thought, if I go to a brick and mortar school and one of my kids gets sick, and I have to leave school and miss class and all this other stuff, I'm like, it's just easier if I can do it from home. It's easier for everybody if I could do it from home. And so, yeah, so I think, so from 26 until 39 is when I graduated. And it's funny because I'll never forget my intro to psychology class. There was a woman that was pursuing her bachelor's degree, and she was in my intro to psych class, and she was 40. And I just remember 17-year-old me, because I was 17 when I started college, like 17-year-old me is like looking at this lady going, oh my gosh, she's 40 and she's doing
Just
this for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, wow, like it just seems like she wasted so much time, right? And so, so starting my master's degree, I literally, my mind went straight back to that woman, and I was like, man, I wish I could track her down and be like, I get it now. I get it, and I'm so sorry for any like judgment that I had in my head over what.
Because now it's just like, I'm so proud of you for
doing it at 40. Like, that's crazy. Because even with my PhD, I was like, I'm 46 now, and I'm like, by the time I finished, I'm gonna be like over 50. Like, that just seems like maybe I missed the boat. Like, that was it. Like,
Definitely.
I should have done it.
But I feel like if it's just like a title that you want, it's not like you're trying to it's not like you're trying to look for an actual career with it, right?
Well, and that's the thing is, like, I've like ever since I started on the psychology path, I wanted to do research and I want to teach at the college level. And so I'm gonna have. I mean, I have to have the PhD. Like, I can teach at the community college level right now with the master's degree, but in order to move up to the university level, I'm gonna have to have that PhD. So at my age, I'm thinking, life happened really, really fast. Like, I swear it feels like last week I was y'all's age. Like, it wasn't that long ago I was y'all's age. Like, I still talk about how the 90s was like, that's just like 10 years ago, right? That was just like
the other day.
10 years ago.
The other day,
So being on this stage of life where I'm like, I've got 4 teenagers at home and I'm 46, my husband is going to be approaching retirement age soon. I'm like, we're kind of like transitioning into a different stage of life. And I'm like, hey, this PhD business is kind of like for younger people. I had it stuck in my head for a while because I'm like, it's just something I had in my head because I had made this plan when I was 17 that I was going to have the PhD by 26.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to be twice. I'm like,
almost twice the age.
I want. I'm like, gosh, I'm really slow at completing these goals, but it's whatever at this point. But then I thought, like, I've got about 5 years between when my oldest son graduated from high school to when my next kid graduates from high school. So I'm like, okay, I got a 5-year window to go ahead and get this done before the next round of high school graduations starts. So that's where I'm at.
Does that like change anything? The fact that the kids start graduating high school, because I figure as they get older, they get more independent.
They get more independent.
To do the school.
You would think. But the older they get, like, their needs change. Yeah. And you have they're more independent now. But with the 3 younger ones not driving, it's like, oh, I made these plans and I made these plans, and I'm like, I got all these people with no licenses and no jobs.
They're making plans with you.
have a better social life than I do.
Yeah.
But their needs just change. Their needs get bigger. The older that they get, the expenses get bigger.
Right.
And so, you know, with one in college now and three starting college, you know, soon after, you know, I'm thinking about like, hey, making sure that they're taken care of or that they've got what they need. But then also thinking like, y'all, I'm like 10 years away from retirement age. Like, I don't know how that happened. I don't know when that happened. Like, I swear last night when I went to bed, I was 25.
Yeah.
And I woke up this morning 46. And I'm like, when did that happen?
What happened here?
And so I'm looking at, like, I'm on, like, approaching the back half of my life. And so I'm trying to think about things a little bit differently. Like, being in a position to where, you know, if once my kids start having kids, like I want to be able to be around for that.
Yeah.
And, you know, women, as we get older, like stuff starts happening to our bodies that no one tells us about in our 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And then when you start asking questions in your 40s, they're like, oh, yeah, that's normal. And I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me earlier? So that way I could have started preparing myself psychologically for this.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, we lose muscle mass as we get older. And so, like, when you're in your late 30s, it's really important to start, like, really, like, building up that muscle because you're going to need that for, like, the downward, you know, the downside of it. But no one really tells you about that kind of stuff. And so now I feel like kind of playing catch up and trying to take care of myself so that I can be, you know, around and healthy for my kids, but then also still complete those goals that I set for myself back when I was 17.
So you don't feel like you're using age as a handicap at all, like as a clutch? Like you're not trying to put any type of weight on that to not pursue your dreams, right?
I think I did at first. I kind of thought about like, man, should I really be doing it at this age? Not so much for the age, but it was more like, am I taking resources away from my kids when I should be like helping like push them along? But then that's part of my personality. I'm a caretaker. And so I'm always taking care of everybody else first before I take care of myself. I want to make sure that like they're set up.
But I feel like that's a really badass way to like lead by example. Because if you have like almost all your little threes in college at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And they might be struggling, and then they see their mom here at whatever age pursuing their PhD. They kind of got to be like, I can't quit this if my mom is doing this right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Use as motivation.
Yeah, I hope so. You know, I mean, you know, one of my kids is going to be a professional athlete. Really, I'm hoping he does it. Like, I want to be out there. And then I've got one that wants to be a vet. And then another one, I don't even know what my youngest wants to do. It changes. You know, when she was little, it was like, I want to be a mermaid when I grow up.
Right.
And then it was like, I want to be a pop star. And, you know, it's always changed. But I think that's one of the things that as a parent, like, I try not to like discourage any of that. I know what life is like. I know what reality is like. I know how hard it is out there, but I don't want to crush that for them. So I try to do like a healthy dose of reality, but also saying, hey, okay, if this is your goal, then how do we do this? Like one of them wants to pursue voice acting. So I'm like, okay, so how do we do this? Like what can we do that's not going to cost us an arm and a leg? For you to pursue it and see if that's something that you like
want to do.
You know, as her mom, I think she's got an amazing voice and that she could do it. But I'm like, but there's a skill that you have to develop and all this other stuff. I totally get that. So
that's a perfect segue because I want to go back to like 16, 17-year-old you, however you were, when you were told that only 1% of people make it big, basically, right? How did that, like, if you can like kind of remember, like, how did that feel? Because that's basically like crushing your dreams, and then you did a hard pivot the other way. So like there's still not any type of like well first I want to know, like, looking back at it now, like how did that feel, and then do you have any regret at all from making that hard pivot, and is there still any kind of itch there for that?
So at the time, you know, that was years ago, and I don't even know that I remember Like, I just remember at that point thinking, like, okay, so maybe I'm not going to be the movie star making the millions of dollars per picture that I thought, but maybe there's something else I can do in theater, maybe like local theater or something else. Like, it was like I wasn't ready to give up on it totally, but I was wanting to explore like other things that I could still do within the field because I am a planner. So I'm like, if plan A doesn't go through, like I need plan B, C, D. I go all the way through C. So I wanted those backup plans. But then I think as I just got older and just matured a little bit, like, I don't know that it ever necessarily went away. Like, it's still something that I really enjoy. And so I don't know, like, I don't really regret it. The itch, I don't know that it's still there, but like I did put up a profile on it's a website that hires extras for the area.
I was going to get to that.
So I have filmed a couple of TV shows. I've been an extra in a couple of TV shows in the background. And it's kind of like, oh, so you kind of get the feeling of what it's like,
right?
What those schedules are like and everything. Not to the degree that, you know, like a main actor would.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, not sure that I would want to do this.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
Maybe it wasn't for me,
yeah. But it was fun to do what I did. And, you know, made a little cash in the process and move along.
So you're a meticulous planner, just like somebody else that I know here, your niece. But like, after you see that like your plan for life has not gone the way that you planned it out, right? How do you kind of still keep believing in your plans if you have like proof that your plans have not worked?
That's actually something.
It's not that her plans haven't worked. Jeez. So negative, Ashley.
No.
The timeline has changed.
Get to the root of it. The timeline of the plan has changed.
There we go. Much better.
Okay.
Jeez.
Sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. The timeline has changed.
No, it's actually something I have been thinking about lately, because we just learned that the school where I teach, because of the way that public education is funded in Texas, our school's moving, and I found out that my job isn't moving with the school. So I won't have a position next year to be able to teach dual credit psychology to my high school students. So, you know, when I got the job, I was really excited because I kind of fell into this job. I literally had taken, after I got my master's degree, I applied for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jobs. And this is like right before COVID. And then when COVID started, I basically quit looking because I was like, all of my kids are home. And, you know, I hate to say it this way, but like COVID was actually a really, really good experience for my family. Like, I hate how difficult it was for us as a nation, and you know, so many people lost loved ones during that time, and it was such a hard time for so many people. But that time during COVID was a really great time for like my family, because at that point my oldest was 16, and we'd always been really close, but of course, you know, teenage boys, and you know, he kind of had his own thing going, and I kind of feel like we were disconnected. And so I literally would go in his room and just watch him play video games and not say anything, and he'd like look at me and he's like, "Do you need something?" And I'm like, I just want to spend time with you. Like, I just want to hang out with you. And so like slowly over time, like we started talking, and like our relationship kind of rebuilt itself. And then like I got to spend time with the three littles in a way that I hadn't really gotten to spend time with them before. And I learned a lot about like their learning styles and their preferences and that sort of thing. So I feel like that put me in a position now that they're getting older that I can help them educationally, or you know, just different things in general. So COVID ended up being a really, really good time for us to get to know each other better, and we spent a lot of time together. And so post COVID, I took a job at my son's high school. I took a job as the receptionist. I'm like, hey, no pressure. Like, I just go, I can do my time and then leave at the end of the day. Like, it's, you know, and it puts me at their school schedule so I can be off when they're off. I don't have to worry about childcare, all of that. So then this position opened up to be able to teach. And I'm like, man, I've always wanted to teach at the college level. And the bonus is I get to teach around their school schedule. So I get to teach college and I get to be on my kids' school schedule.
Right.
Like, it's like the perfect unicorn job. I couldn't have asked for a better job. And literally I took that job thinking I'm going to be here until like y'all wheel me out in a wheelchair. Like, it's perfect.
Yeah, this is
the perfect job for me. I'm not going anywhere. So now I'm in that position of transition again where it's like, okay, I made this plan. Like, I'm going there to retire. And so now, like, plans have basically been changed for me. And so what I have learned about myself over the years is that I know that I don't do well with change. Like, I don't adjust well to change. I am not one of those people that is like, okay, things didn't go like I planned, but it's okay, we'll work it out. Like, that's not me.
That's me.
I'm not that person. I'm not the person that goes, my husband says that I always see the glass half empty. And I say, I'm a realist. I'm not negative. I'm just living in reality. When you're living in your la la land. But I live in reality. And so, so I feel like I'm always getting put into these situations where I don't have control because I am so controlling. And so you would think that I would have learned my lesson by now, but I haven't. But what I have learned about myself in the process is that I make all of these plans, partly just the anxiety and the unknown of the future. And then I don't like the change. I don't like when things don't go according to plan. And so what I've learned about myself is that I give myself a certain amount of time. And I say, okay, you have this amount of time to be mad and angry and petty and childish. And you can just, you can be that person for a certain amount of time. And then you have to get up and you have to just keep moving forward, right? Even if it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and if you're frustrated because there's no progress or whatever, as long as you just keep making some forward progress. Because if not, I know me, and I'll get stuck in the it's not fair and all of the ugly stuff, and why can't things go the way I wanted them to? And so there's always, as long as there's always some forward progress, it's okay. Like, I know it'll be okay. But I know that there's going to be, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Dr. Brene Brown, but she's always talking about, like, when you're like in the middle of like these life events, like people always talk about, oh, I went through this horrible tragedy. And now everything's okay. And we're doing this. And she's like, nobody talks about like that messy middle. Like when you're literally on the floor fighting for your life. Like nobody talks about that because nobody wants to hear about that. You want to hear like the quick montage of everything was sucked. Now everything's great. And so I know that when I'm in that messy middle, it's ugly. I'm not a nice person to be around sometimes. But I know that when I'm in the middle of that, I have a good support network that knows that about me. And my husband has learned to not try to like be the positive person. He literally just sits there and listens to me. Because before he used to be like, hey, we'll just do this and you can do that. And I'm like, I don't want you to fix it. I just want to be mad. I want to be mad right now. Just let me be mad. So when you're like doing all of that battle with yourself and trying to readjust your goals and like, was this even worth it? Or should I even continue? I think as long as you just keep moving forward and you may not understand where you're going or what's going to be ahead of you, but you just have to move forward because you just never know what's going to be on the other side. I mean, I never thought I was going to end up teaching at a high school, teaching college courses at a high school. Like that's not what I envisioned. The only thing I wanted was to be able to teach college level psychology. And I got it, just not the way that I thought I was going to get it. And so I know that's going to happen again at some point. So I just have to get through this yucky middle of it's not fair and why couldn't I just go, be here forever?
Right now you're in that phase of like having to adapt, change that plan and like
And it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have days where I'm like, I'm just mad and I'm like, this sucks and it's not fair. But I can't, and sometimes it gets really easy to go to just, when you're in that ugly part, to just stay there. And I literally say, okay, you've got 5 minutes to be mad, and then you have to move on. And like, it's good for me, it's good for my kids, and it's something that I'm modeling for my students too, because they're going through this change too, and for many of them, this is the first time that they've had like a major life event like this. And so us as the adults in their lives, like, we have to model what that looks like. Yes, life sucks sometimes, and sometimes our plans don't go according to the way we wanted them to go, but we have to keep, you know, doing the work every day, until we figure out what's going on.
Yeah. But I like that you kind of go into that with your students, because a lot of times when you have an adult and you have a kid, you're kind of just like, you just have to do what you're told, right?
Yeah.
But if you kind of help them like understand, like, you know, that changes come, like, you have to adapt to the change, like, it already sets them up in a better position for whenever something happens again down the line. Like, I'm gonna remember what Mrs. Insert last name here said. Mrs. Lupe said. A change about change.
Well, and the thing is, like, that first day when we found out that our school was moving, so we weren't even going to be in our same building anymore. And so I sat down with my students and I was like, hey, tell me how you're feeling. Like, and if you could be mad, you could be sad, you could be indifferent, you could be excited. Like, I don't care if you're excited. Whatever you're feeling is fine. But here's the thing, like, we're all going through this change together. So we're going through it together, but we are each our own individual people with our own individual backgrounds and life experiences. So it's going to hit all of us a little bit differently. But this is a good lesson in, you make plans, life has other plans for you, and so you have to figure out, what kind of person are you? Am I going to be the person that gets stuck in the mud and goes, I'm not going, and you just drown in that mud, or are you going to try to move forward with everybody else? So
I think it's great that you I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead. Mine is going to something.
I just wanted to say that I think it's great that you model that behavior for your kiddos. I think at least like in some of the schools out here, we don't really have that opportunity to do so, and like, we know that a lot of our kiddos are struggling emotionally, so the fact that you're able to be that presence for them of like, this is what emotional safety looks like, this is what being able to express yourself looks like, right, is really great. And I think it's so helpful for them, especially as teenagers, you know. I think just taking that time to even just check in with them is super supportive. So I just wanted to commend you on that.
Thank you.
I'm sure your kids enjoy having you as a mom, your actual kids.
Well, I don't know.
Sometimes.
I don't know about that, because one of my kids goes to school at the school where I teach, and it's funny. And I think for me, one of the hardest parts about this change is that, like, I'm not going to be on campus with her anymore, and like, she literally will like see me in the hall and come give me a big hug and kiss me right on the lips. And there have been a couple of kids that are like, "Are y'all related?" And I'm like, "No, I greet all of my students this way." I'm like, "You want a hug?" And they're like, I'm like, "Yeah, she's my kid. What are you thinking? I'm not just going to kiss random students on the lips."
Who are you?
Right. I was gonna. So you do have the bachelor's and the master's.
I have a bachelor's
in psychology.
In psychology. I have a master's in social psychology with an emphasis in culture. So my thesis started as an emphasis on how different cultures approach stress and how they cope with stress. And I was looking at it from like an individualistic versus a collectivistic culture, and like how we deal with stress differently. Because just growing up in a traditional Hispanic family, I'm like, stress was not something that we really talked about, or it was just, it's something like that you just endured, and then everybody deals with it, so you just suck it up and, you know, you move on. And so that was my emphasis, was on that cultural aspect of it, and I loved it. I loved exploring how different cultures approach the field of psychology. And so I'm hoping in my PhD I can do something along those lines
that's
too.
like what Sam is kind of studying, how representation when higher education affects how well you do. So it's always taking like that dive into the separate cultures. But I was curious, as if like with these educations in psychology and whatnot, right? As a mother, do you like whenever you're going through things with your kids, right? Do you look at it through your psychology education background, or sometimes do you feel like you have to turn that off and just like know that they're going to be acting up for whatever reason, or like do you feel like you can always look through that lens of your education and react differently to what they're doing?
It's interesting that you say that, because that's something that I've had to confront. Because again, as the caretaker, like if I say, "Hey, how are you doing?" and one of my kids are like, "I'm okay," I'm like over analyzing. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, are you really okay? Are you hungry, or are you sad? And they're like, I'm literally just okay.
Yeah, I'm just chilling.
And so I've had to learn to take a step back and like, because I'm an overprotective mom to begin with, and then you throw in the psychology on top of that, I can be too much sometimes. And so there have been instances where I have to like literally take a step back and be like, okay, am I reacting as a mom right now, or am I reacting as a psychologist right now? And what do they need right now?
Right.
Like what do I need to do? And there have been times where I've had to talk to other experts and just be like, okay, I'm a mom, but I'm also a psychologist, and this is what I'm dealing with. So as a impartial third party, you know, am I being extra, or is this a valid concern? And there have been times where I've been told like, yeah, you're just, you know, you're being a little too much, or it's like, no, that's probably something you should explore further. But yeah, my kids do joke around about like when I'm looking at them, they're like, stop psychoanalyzing me.
But I guess it does help when certain things do come up that they don't want to talk about, and you kind of do dig deeper there.
Well, and you know, like we've had instances where like I want my kids to be friends with everybody. Not friends with everybody, but I want them to be kind to everybody.
Right.
And my children have grown up in an environment that is probably different to a lot of like what their friends have experienced. With my oldest specifically, like, I don't know what it was about, there was something in his soul, like some stability in his soul that attracted all of these like strange personalities. And so there were times where I said, hey, I don't mind you being a good friend to this person, but if this person ever does XYZ, like I'm stepping in because you are my priority, and like your emotional well-being is my priority. So when I start seeing some like codependent style behaviors, like you care more about what's going on in their lives than they do, then I step in. And so that has been beneficial to walk through them with some of that, because I can say, hey, at 16 years old, you are not emotionally or professionally equipped to deal with some of these issues that your friends are dealing with. And I hate that for them, that they have to deal with these things, but you can't fix it. Like I can't fix it.
Right.
And so my job is to protect you in the end. So
before I want to make sure Sam didn't have anything to say whenever I go into this other thing. So you're the first person we have on of the two that are a mother, right? And earlier you were talking about how 2 of your 4 kids have like these big dreams, right? Pro athlete and like sometimes a pop star or whatever, right? And I know you said that, and the voice actor. Right. 3 different kids, or does the pop star want to be a voice actor?
No, 2 different kids. Yeah.
Okay.
So the voice actor also wants to be a vet.
Okay. So, voice actor vet. So I know you said that you kind of help them work towards that and make a plan with like the dosage of reality. So like, how do you walk that fine line of, I'm not trying to discourage you, but like the truth is, you know, because you were told that only 1% make it, right? I don't know if that's something that you would tell your kids, right? So like, how do you walk that fine line of like, I'm supporting you on this, but like, I'm also trying to make sure that you're going to be okay whenever you realize that this may not actually work out.
So the biggest conversations have been with my kid that wants to be the pro athlete, because I do not want to be that dream crusher, but I also understand like the reality or the likelihood that this may or may not happen for him. And so my conversations with him are centered on the reality part is, hey, here are all of the high school athletes. Okay, so the best of the best get those college positions, right? So we're kind of funneling down, right? And then the best of the best get those college positions, but then only the best of those best in college actually make it for an opportunity to become a professional athlete. And so those guys, even then, don't even make it. And that guy was probably the best at his high school, probably the best in his state, but he didn't make it as a professional athlete because when we get to this point, there are so many just talented athletes. And so that's the reality of it, you know, that you're facing an uphill battle. But if this is what you want to do, then I am right here with you for it. But there are some things you're going to have to do. Like if that's your goal, you can't have this goal over here and keep doing stuff over here and think that eventually those are going to line up. That's not going to happen. So if this is your goal, I'm right there with you. I'm going to be right there with you the whole way. But that means the workouts, the discipline, the academics, the diet, all of that stuff has to fall in line so that you have that fighting chance to do it. And if you're willing to do it, then I'm right here with you.
Out of curiosity, whenever you or that child, I'm assuming it's a boy, he talks about being a professional athlete, he only is focusing on America's professional athletes, or does he realize that he could play overseas? And is that something that you put on the table too? Like, hey, because professional, like Gabby always tells me with the DJ thing, right? A professional means you got paid for it, right? So like he could be a professional athlete in a different country, but is he only focused on being like that mega superstar athlete here, or he just wants to actually make this his career?
So in my personal opinion, I think what he is focusing on, like many boys his age, is the lifestyle, right? The fame, the fortune, the all of the gold
facade
chain,
of it.
All of the shoes that you could want, the cars, the houses, all of that. He's focused on that. And I'm like, you can have that lifestyle and never be a professional athlete. Like there are other ways.
Nobody knows who you are.
Like he wants to be famous. And in that aspect, like I understand. Like I get that. When I was your age, every household was going to know my name.
Me too.
Right? Like everybody was going to know me. Because I was going to be the leading actress in whatever movie. So I understand that desire. But then again, as the adult, I understand like the amount of work that was going to have to go into doing that. And at age 17, I decided I don't want to put that effort in. Like that's not what I want to do. But I tell him all the time, if that's the effort you want, if that's what you want, then I will be right here with you to do that work. And so I don't even know that we've even really talked about like being an athlete in another country, because I'm really trying to get him to focus on, if this is your goal, there are steps that have to occur to get there. Because it's not just going to happen on its own. I would love to wake up tomorrow morning and be 50 pounds lighter, but that's not going to happen. Like I have to make small changes every day to make that work. And so that's kind of where we are. And then you're also battling the teenage boy syndrome where they know everything and you don't know what you're talking about, even though you've been on this planet 3 times longer than they have.
I know how to get there. You don't. You don't know what it.
You're not an athlete. You don't understand.
Is that something that both parents are supporting?
His
big dream.
Because actually, like my husband is like out there like doing workouts with them and saying like, "Hey, here are some workouts. These are some things you need to do." And I think at first my son was like, "What do you know?" But I was like, "Dude, like he was in the military, Like he used to do amateur bodybuilding when we like first got married, like." He knows what he's talking about. You just see him as dad. You don't see him as like former athlete.
Well, he is. He's just who you are. Who he is to you. So from all the things that you've accomplished in life, right? Even though the timeline may have changed, right? Because you started a family, which you love your family, all that stuff, right? So what do you feel like has been the like most difficult thing that you've had to overcome? Whether it's been like the fear of continuing education, or that you won't reach your goals, like what do you think is something that you're still kind of fighting on, or that you've overcome throughout your time?
That's a big question. Gosh,
you want to break it down?
And there could be, I know Ashley said like one, but there could, you have a lot of different aspects in your life. So if there's others,
one might be family related, one might be education related. One might be Lupe related that doesn't even have to do with your family or education,
So I I never envisioned myself as a mom, like as a wife or a mom. Like that idea never even crossed my mind. And as a like even when we first got married, like neither one of us even talked about kids because we weren't really like serious about having kids. Um but then once we started a family, like I could not imagine life without them. And so that initial shift really was like, hey, you thought you had this one particular goal in your life, but something else has come up. And like it completely shifted my perspective. Not to say that like I became, like obsessed with motherhood or whatever, but there were years where I was mom, right? And I had a hard time separating like who I was as a person.
Lupe from mom.
Yeah, from mom. And as a matter of fact, we even joked the other day about how I could always tell who was, my kid's friend because they're like, oh, you're such and such's mom, or you're such and such's mom. Like I was just somebody's mom for so many years. And I still am. But as I get older and they don't need me as much, I think it's a little bit scary, but it's also kind of fun to kind of jump back into, okay, like who am I apart from being their mom?
Yes.
And even when I went back to work, I was like, people were like, what are you going to do now that your kids are in school and so they don't really need you to be at home much? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like,
so you're still actively figuring that out.
Yeah. Like it was at that point, well, it was like 3 or 4 years ago before I got this job. I was like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like I literally am starting with a blank slate. Like I've been a stay-at-home mom for years. And so now it's not like I have like, oh, I need to get into this job or this particular field because I need to make a certain amount of money or whatever. Like I need to make a lateral move or an increase. Like literally I've made nothing. And so whatever job I take, it's just going to be a bonus at this point. But it was really like getting to figure out like, hey, what do I want to do? Like, and so it was a balance of, okay, I really want to be a college professor, but I also know that I still have children that need me. And so how can I make both of those work? In a way that I feel fulfilled as an individual, but that I still feel like I'm doing a good job as a mom. And so that was a huge thing to try to like overcome or deal with when I first started back to work. And it was a rough transition at first because I remember my youngest was like, well, who's going to pick me up from school and who am I going to tell my day about? Because she would like hop in the car and be like, Mama, this happened and such did this and such like I got all of the 4th grade drama, right? School. And I'm like I'm gonna be home like 30 minutes after you, right? Like it's not so we all had like some adjustments to make. Or even like one of my kids now is like, I'll say something about like, it's time to go make your lunch for tomorrow, and she's like, I'm spoiled, I don't like making my own lunch.
So then that falls on you.
So I'm like, so I still try to do some of those things. But again, it's always like once I became a mom, it became a balance of like me versus mom. And for many years, those lines were blurred where I was mom. And so now I'm kind of taking that step back and going, okay, who am I as an individual? What do I like to do?
Who are you? Who are you?
That's self-discovery.
Still trying to figure that. I was trying to let's figure it out on the podcast.
I'm a really creative person. Naturally, I'm a very creative person. I enjoy photography. I love reading. I actually have like 3 different fiction novels that I have like outlined and mapped out like on my Google Drive. I have
you also make journals like those.
I make a lot of things. I have a booth at a shop here in the area where I make a lot of things and sell there. So creativity plays a big part. And that's actually been like my big stress reliever. Whenever things get like rough, I'm like, hey, I gotta go make something. I gotta go paint a piece of furniture or I gotta go create something. That's like the outlet.
That's never been something that you wanted to try to pursue as...
Okay, so it's funny because the photography I started to pursue out of necessity when I was a stay-at-home mom. It was like, well, Christmas is coming up and we need to, we need some extra cash. So I started doing like sorry.
You're good.
I started doing the photography for money,
Uh-huh.
and I started to not like it as much
Mm-hmm.
because there was so much like pressure to get it right,
Yeah.
and like I don't know, like when you're
It took
taking
like the
family,
creativity out of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
it made it a necessity instead of a stress
yeah,
reliever.
and I
Yeah.
love like landscape photography. I love doing like textures. I love photographing textures.
Mm-hmm.
The people part, like if it's people that I know, like if it's my
Mm-hmm.
people, like I love capturing those images of those
Mm-hmm.
people. But like I'll never forget, I did a family photo shoot for this family one time, and like the husband was mad because we booked it in the middle of like a Cowboys game, and so he didn't want to be there. And then the mom, she picked something by a lake, and it was like, so she's yelling at her kids because
Oh
the
my
two
god.
boys naturally want to go play in the water, right?
Right.
And so they're like all like not happy, and I'm like, and I have
Mm-hmm.
to create these really pretty
Right. Out
like
of this
beautiful
mess.
family memories out of
Mm-hmm.
this, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what am I doing?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of like what you've been talking about, how like you go through these messy parts of life, and then you have
Yeah,
to come out on top. So you have this messy
family
family
situation.
here, and you have to just make it look so nice.
Oh my gosh. And it was like, I remember with that instance, like on top of that, the reason why they were doing this in a hurry was because their family pet was getting older, and they were going to have to make a decision to put him down soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted like some pictures, family pictures with them.
Right.
So then there's the stress on top of that, that you're also photographing a dying animal
Right.
in with all of these other family things. And I was like, what am I doing? Is this worth the amount of money that
Yeah.
I'm making?
Mm-hmm.
And really, yeah, it was a lot of pressure. And so when I take pictures for people now, like I don't charge because I just want it to be for fun,
Low stress.
low
like,
stress.
yeah.
If you like them, great. If you don't, you didn't pay me any money, so you're not out anything
Deal
at
with
your
it.
time.
Yeah.
I swear, you and Gabby need to get together and do something creatively because y'all are one and the same, and it's kind of like she needs a little push from you.
Even now with pictures, I'm like, people are like, "Do you still take pictures?" And I'm like, "No, but my niece does.
Yeah.
Let me give you her information."
I know. I think the last thing she did was we did a wedding last February, like a year ago. But ever since then, I'm like,
Weddings are,
they're tough.
weddings are tough. Weddings are tough.
Well,
There's so much pressure to get it right. There's
Yeah.
so much pressure
Yeah.
to get. You can't say, "Oh wait, I didn't get that. Can you go back and put the ring on her finger again and say I do?" Like,
yeah,
you
can
can't.
y'all
You
walk
have,
back in?
Yeah, you have to get it right the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's too much pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Too much pressure.
Yeah. Well, Lupe,
Yes.
you're currently in this phase of life of trying to figure yourself out, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what your next step career-wise is going to be.
What I'm gonna do when I grow up.
Yeah. What do you?
I'm still growing.
Literally. I really feel like, especially with your husband reaching the age of retirement, like, hey, that's more time that he gets to spend at home with the kids, that you can go back to school, make your dreams happen.
Yeah, but then I'm also like, I don't know. I'm like, how come you get to sleep in late and I don't? Like, I want to sleep in too.
You have a dream to chase.
I
You
know.
still have a dream to chase.
I know.
Has he accomplished all of his dreams?
Mm. He's actually starting back this summer, finishing his bachelor's degree. So that's one of the things that he's always wanted to do. So
What is he trying to do?
he
He
wants
just
to,
wants the bachelor's.
he wants to finish his bachelor's degree so that way he can be an example for the kids to say, hey, it's never too late to do it. And depend. It's never late to do it, and whatever circumstances you're in, if you want to make the time to do it, you can find the time to do it. So yeah, he's finishing it up this summer.
I want to go back because sorry if I forgot. The reason why the PhD is questionable is not because it's too late to do it. It's because you don't know if it's going to be any benefit to your life, or
There's a lot of things, and again, I'm an overthinker. I'm an overanalyzer, and so part of it is I'm thinking about not necessarily the age, but like the stage of life that I'm in. My kids are starting to get involved in more things like after school. Like my youngest plays sports, and my my 15-year-old is about to start playing football, and so there's going to be a lot of, I guess, demands on my time, and so it's more of like a fear of, can I juggle a full-time job, full-time mom, and school on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I work with several people who are in the middle of their PhD, and I
Mm-hmm.
see how stressed out they are, and they're like, don't do it, don't do it. And so that's
Mm.
why I'm like, you know what?
Do it.
Ignorance
Mm-hmm.
is bliss. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to jump in
Uh-huh.
and not overthink it
Figure it
this
out for
time.
yourself.
And I'm just going to take one class at a time, and
Yeah.
we're going to
Yeah.
just go slowly until like, but I am a career student. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I
Mm-hmm.
won the lottery tomorrow, I literally would I'd quit my job and become a career student.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Just keep learning and
I would
learning.
keep learning. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those things. It's just the fear of getting started. But
Mm-hmm.
once I get in there in August, I'm just going to be like, why didn't I start this
This
sooner?
August?
Yeah, this August.
Oh, so you're starting this August?
This August.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
look at
she's
that.
starting in the fall. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I was
yeah.
actually going to start. I was actually going to start in April
Mhm.
because the school that I'm going through offered an incentive if you start early,
Yeah.
and I thought I was going to do it, but then I'm like, okay, with the uncertainties with work and stuff, I
Mhm.
want to make sure I have that taken care of first before I
Mhm.
start the
Yeah,
program.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
going to start in August.
Yeah.
Start one
With
one
the,
class at a time.
I'm so sorry.
That's
No.
okay.
Um, with the program that you're doing, do you know if it's like if they're gonna break down the dissertation process, or are you doing everything at the end?
Dissertation process is all at the end, so it's all of the coursework up front, and then it's
Yeah.
all dissertation at the end. But a couple of my friends that are in the process right now said it's really, really good if you start taking these
Yes.
classes with some sort of idea of what you
Yeah.
want to do.
Mhm.
Because
Yes.
one of my friends said that she didn't think about that towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have some ideas about what I want to pursue.
Mhm.
But dissertation is like it's like a big deal, and it's like
It's a
Uh-huh.
beast. It's
and
yeah.
so years ago, well, when I was in my master's program, I ran across a child development theory by a professor out of UCLA,
Mhm.
and she incorporated like globalization as part of her child
Mhm.
development theory.
Mhm.
So not just like the influences of the genetic influences and your society or your cultural influences,
Mhm.
but she went like global. Like
Mhm.
when you live in a first world country versus a third world country, what does that do to like an individual child's development?
Yeah.
And like that was fascinating to me, like that theory. And so like that's one of the things, like trying to approach a child development theory based on what's going on in the world today. Like our generation, the younger generations today have access to technology that like I didn't have access to as a
Right.
kid, and even more access than you had as a
Right.
kid.
Yeah.
And so all of that influences their development. I'm seeing it as a teacher. And so I'm really curious on that aspect, but I also would love to dig back into doing something with culture and looking at like stress and all of like the medical issues that arise with stress when we don't deal with it, and then how do other cultures approach stress? Do they even have the same amount of stress
Right.
that we do in our culture here?
Right. I got you.
So
As you know, we've talked
You
about.
could.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry. Go.
Go, Sam. This is how we do.
you got a dissertation
Go
idea
ahead,
for
Sam.
me?
Yeah, because you could use the globalization for that too. You could use the globalization and how they deal with stress, right? Because you're talking about the culture, you're talking about the globalization, you're talking about how different countries deal with stress. Because you see it too, like, I think each country has their different kind of stress, and some countries deal with it in like that collectivist way, and then some are like very individualistic, like the United States, you know? I think that, like, when you were talking about how your family dealt with stress, it's like with Latinos, we Latinos who immigrate here, they have this like dual kind of processing happening, I feel, because it's like you're in the United States that's in an individualistic culture, right? And they're like, me, 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 me. It's about how I get rich. It's about how I make money, how I do this. But then your Latino culture is also like, no, we got to do it together. We got to push forward together, right? It's very family oriented, very like, respect your elders, do that. And so when you were talking about that, I'm like, how, like, just thinking about how we navigate that, right? And how we continue to um, navigate it throughout our whole life. Like, we're constantly battling this, like, mentality of, like, I got to worry about me and get mine. But then we're also like, no, I want to continue to push forward, the community, the culture, my family, or whatever. So, yeah,
Well, and
I
one
don't
of the
know.
things, like, I think those first generation immigrants are the ones that have it the worst because I basically have like
Yes.
one foot in each world. And so, like, at home, you're hearing one thing, but you
Yeah.
go to school and you're getting exposed to a completely
Mm-hmm.
different culture.
Mm-hmm.
And you're
Yes.
trying to figure out, like, how do I navigate
Yeah.
both of those? And I want a little bit of this. And so, but when I'm over here, like, I feel guilty. I feel like I'm
Mm-hmm.
betraying my culture of origin. But then there's
Yes.
like a strong comfort in that culture of origin.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Yes.
I think those first generation kids have it the hardest because they're having to figure out a new path for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make everybody happy when you're doing it that way.
Mm-mm.
And, that can burn some bridges sometimes
Mm-hmm.
as you're
Yeah.
literally developing your own culture. You end up a
Yeah.
little bit of this and a little bit of
Right.
For
that,
that.
and then you
Yeah.
have your own kind of like mesh of a culture.
Do
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you've had to kind of like step out of the norm of your culture to do any things? Like, I don't know if your whole family is here, or like when you moved to South Carolina, was that something like, how are you going to be moving away from your family type? Like, have you had to kind of combat your culture with some of your life decisions?
See, that wasn't an issue so much as like when my dad first decided he took a job here in Texas. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of our family was in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he probably got the brunt of it. Like, why are you leaving? We're all here, all
Mm-hmm.
of that. And my dad was like, I have to do what's best for my family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And moving here ended up being really, really great. Like, it was a great economic opportunity for us as a family.
Right.
But then also, like, the four of us got really close because it was
Mm-hmm.
just the four of us here. Like, on
Mm-hmm.
holidays and stuff, like, we did everything together. So we grew really close as a family.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that they probably faced a lot of, like, hey, why would you, like, what's in Texas? Why would you
Yeah.
move to Texas? Like,
What
I tell
the
people,
job is more important than your family?
yeah, and I think now as an adult, I think back to like my dad was, what age my dad was when he had to make that decision for his
Mm-hmm.
family. And I can have a different appreciation of that now because I'm
Yeah.
like, man, that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge decision to have to make for your family
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
having to decide like, here's my family here in California, but then like I have this other family, my creative family that I'm responsible for and I have to take
Mm-hmm.
care of.
Mm-hmm.
And I can appreciate things differently where I may not have understood it when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and now as an adult with my own kids, and I think I heard you guys talk about something on another podcast about this and talking about like parents and stuff. And,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times as kids or as teenagers, we look at our parents and they're like, they just don't understand or they don't know or
Yeah.
times are different or, but really like our parents are doing the best that they can with
Mm-hmm.
the tools and the resources that they
Yes.
have.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And once we are adults and we can look back at that, I
Mm-hmm.
think it shifts, like it has shifted my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like my parents pushed college very, very heavily. Like there was no
Yeah.
option after high school outside of college,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because, you come to this country and if you work hard enough, you can have whatever you want, right? That's the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so at times it felt like I didn't have a say in what I was going to do, but I did. I had all of the say in what I was going to do. The only thing that they asked is that I went to college.
Right.
And so now as an adult with my own children who are now at that stage of life where they're, having to start making those decisions. My oldest is having to start like really making those decisions about what he wants to do with the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a different appreciation for those conversations that I had with my parents when I
Right.
was younger.
I feel like at like Sam's and I age now when we're older, right? And my mom says it all the time. Like now you're starting to understand the things that I used to tell you when you were younger, right? But I feel like it's like there's a quote that says like to kind of take it easy on your parents because this is their first time living their life as well, right?
Yeah.
So like it's very interesting to just picture like in your family, like you have all these kids going through high school and whatnot, and then you have the parent that is also trying to figure out their life. So you have like this whole like area of development and clarity that's going on whenever it's like people think that the parents should just know what they're doing all the time, have everything figured out, always have the right answers.
Yeah.
And then the kids don't realize that, like, damn, like my parents are like figuring this out as they go too. Like,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like,
We're watching each other
Yeah.
grow up, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching them grow up,
Mhm.
and then, like, I've never been a parent to teenagers. Like,
Mhm.
I can talk all day long about what it's like to parent a whole bunch of toddlers at once, right? But I've never been a parent to all of these teenagers. And, you know, there are so many days that I look at it and I'm like, man, I wish I can go back to those days where, like, I was the most influential person in their lives.
Yeah.
And, like, I could control their entire environment, because then I could protect them from all of the heartbreak and the hurt and just
Yeah.
all of, like, the mean kids at school. And so now I'm like, I have to teach them how to protect themselves. And there's like,
Yeah.
I'm having to learn how to do that. Because my
And
kids
letting
have
go
joked about,
and like
yeah, my kids have
Yeah.
joked about me being the crazy Mexican mom, because they're like, you tell mama about something that happened at school, she's ready to go fight some people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I will fight some people over
Yeah.
my kids.
yeah.
But, you know, it's, you know, my grandma told me a long time ago, when I found out I was pregnant with my youngest, I was overwhelmed because I had a 3-month-old and an 18-month-old at home. And so I called her and I was like, what do I do? Like, how do you, like, you had 8 kids. Like, how do you handle this? Like, how do you manage this? And she was like, she looked at me and she said, she's like, oh, you have so much more you have so much more opportunity
to you.
and availability than I did. She's like, I didn't even know how to drive when I had all of these little kids. She's like, you have a car, you can go wherever you want to. And I'm like, so she, like, having her perspective on my situation, and she was like, what are you talking about? Like, you have it easy. Like,
Yeah.
helped me adjust to it. But one of the pieces of advice that she gave me that has stuck with me forever, and I have to remind myself of it constantly, is she says, it's not about what you do for your kids, it's what you teach them to do for themselves.
So, yeah.
So while they're little, you do everything for them. And then I feel like us as, you know, Latina moms, we tend to try to do for them later and later into life. And we have to start stepping back and go, hey, now it's time, you know, you're going to start doing some of this stuff on your own.
Yeah. I've you know, new mom here. I have just, like, big goals and dreams in life, right? And like I have like this I don't really think it's a stress, but like this idea of I want to give my kids everything in the world, right? Like, and I always say I want to give my kid the world, right? And I was talking to one of my friends about that, and they said you have to realize that your kid's world right now is just you feeding them, changing them, and loving them. You know what I mean? So I kind of had to like realize like I have this time to grow, right? To grow, to achieve the accomplishments I want to achieve. And my kid, up until, I don't know at what age they start being aware of what your parent is doing, but like from birth to like, I don't know, 10, 11 or whatever, you're not going to remember what your parents were doing at that time, right? So like they may not remember that like you didn't have the nicest things or the newest things, whatever, right? But like I had to like give myself the okay to like take the time to grow into the person that I want to become, to be able to give them the life that I want to give them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think naturally we want to give all of our kids, we want to give our kids all of the things that we didn't have or things that we feel like we missed out on. But like even now, having some conversations with my mom, like we had a conversation about like what was my favorite Christmas, and I was telling her about the year that was my favorite Christmas, and she was like, that was the hardest Christmas for us. Like as a family, it was the year before we moved to Texas, and so it was hard on our family. And so her memory of that Christmas was completely different from my memory of that Christmas, and that conversation always stuck with me because when I was a stay-at-home mom, like there was not extra money for anything. Like my kids wanted to do like dance lessons or like sports things. Like there was no extra money for that kind of thing. And there was a little, there was a lot of mom guilt that went into not being able to give them everything that they asked for. And so little things that I did, like my girls wanted to take dance lessons and we couldn't afford the dance lessons. And so like, We put on YouTube tutorial
I was about to
videos.
say YouTube Academy.
And we moved the kitchen table out of the way,
Yeah.
and we literally had our dance classes right there. Or like as a family, we would have like dance competitions. So we would put on like just dance videos upstairs, and we would have like dance offs. So there were a lot of things that we did, and we had to get creative with doing that all revolved around spending time with each other and establishing those relationships and those memories. And in the moment, like, you can't help but go like, oh, everybody else is able to do all of these things and pay for all of these things for their kids,
Right.
and not trying to knock that down at all. But for us, in the situation that we were in, like, we couldn't provide a lot of that stuff, especially for four kids. Like, one, maybe you can swing it, two, but not for four.
Right.
And so we spent a lot of time creating different kinds of memories for them. Like, even we used to load up in the car and drive to El Paso to see my parents for 6 weeks during the summer. And like, to this day, that's some of the stuff that my kids still talk about, like their favorite memory for spending the summer in El Paso.
Yeah.
And we didn't, like, we went to like the city pool, and
nothing special, but it was
nothing
an
special,
event. Yeah.
but they loved it.
That's a really beautiful thing, because it's like, had you put them in dance classes, they probably wouldn't remember the teacher, probably would have quit maybe a year or two later, but they remember, let's move the stuff from the kitchen, like, we're gonna have these dance competitions at home. So like, you were like very successful at creating an actual memory instead of like something that they're gonna go to.
Yeah. And I became the master at finding free stuff to do. Like,
Yeah.
like, it was, there is like a park over on the north side of Fort Worth that has this pretty little river running through it. And I'm like, hey, if we go in the middle of the day, we're going to pack some snacks.
Yeah.
We're going to have an adventure. So yeah, I became the master at finding all of these free things to do. But again, it was about, in the moment, I had to keep reminding myself, you're doing the best that you can with what you have. And the end of the day, the goal is the memories and the relationships. Because it's like, the relationships are what's going to carry us through those like sticky teenage years, or, whatever. And, and we're not going to get it right. Like, I have conversations with my kids now, and, I'm like, they have a different idea, or they have a different memory of how some things went down than I did. But now we can talk about it, and I'm like, oh, like, that's not the way I was trying to convey that message. Like, I'm sorry you've been hanging on to it that way. I said, but this is what I was trying to get at. But in the future, like, hey, so that way you're not hanging on to this for years going, you said we were going to do this and we never did it.
Yeah. You try not to be too hard on parents. Like, this is a dumb example, but my parents, as accepting and loving they are, right, of me being gay, right? I remember whenever I was first in that era of coming out, right? My mom was kind of okay with it, but my mom is a stay-at-home mom, right? So like, a lot of stuff that she says or do has to be like what my dad is saying to do, right? So as much as like she might have been like okay with it, like, one of the things I remember my dad saying was like, you're not going to be gay in this house, right? And he's very accepting, he's very loving, he fucking loves Gabby so much, right? But I'm just like, sometimes I'm just like, I think of that, I'm just like, I remember you saying that, and like, look at you now. But it's like, I love you so much, I know you love me, right? But it's just like that always stuck, right? I'm just like, you try not to, not that I'm like still holding a grudge at him or anything, right? But it's just one of those things I'm just like, dang, like, I remember that.
And
many years ago,
my parents weren't happy with my choice in partner, and I feel like at first, and I feel like as a parent now, like, you have poured your life into this other human being, and honestly, nobody's ever going to love your child the way that you love them. No one's going to take as good care of your kid as you do. And so, like, by default, nobody's ever going to be good enough for your kid.
Right.
Nobody is.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
well, good enough or better than you. Because, like,
well, yeah,
like
good enough, parent, yes. No one's ever going to love you as good as I do. Or,
as much as I do.
Like, I remember the first girlfriend that my oldest had, and, like, they broke up, and he was upset, and I was like, no. you do not break my baby's heart. Like, you don't. And so, like, I was mad at her forever, and they eventually, like, kind of worked through things, and they got to be friends again. And, like, I wanted to hold a grudge because I was like, no, I was there when he was upset about this. But then I was like, he's grown, he's matured, he's forgiven. Like, that's the person that I want him to be.
You raised him right.
I don't want him to hold these grudges, or I don't want him to, like, hold on to this, you know, hatred or anger or whatever. And I'm like, he's growing up the way I wanted him to grow up to. So if he's okay, then I'm okay. And so now, like, my philosophy with them, with all 4 of my kids, is I don't care who you end up with, as long as they love you and they support you and they encourage you and they truly, honestly want what's best for you. Whoever that is. I don't care at this point.
Beautiful.
I mean, my kids are amazing.
Nothing much else you can want for them. Like,
no. And that's the thing,
be a
is,
good
like,
person, and
it's like, what do I want in a partner? And then that's what I want for my kids. I want somebody who's going to be there, who can be, like, when they can only give 20%, someone who can step in and give that other 80%, right? Someone that's going to work with them, or say, hey, this is your dream, like, go after it. Because every time I've gone to my husband and I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about this degree, and he's like, okay, well, what do you need? Like, what do you need me to do? How do we get this started?
That's also good. Like, what's the plan?
And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just kind of talking it out to see if it sounds crazy when it comes out of my mouth.
I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, like, when I finished my master's degree, like, I was stressed out, and my advisor at the time was like, hey, like, if you want to keep going into your PhD, like, he's like, I'd love to be your advisor for your PhD. He's like, we already have, like, it would be easy. It would be an easy transition. He's like, I already have a dissertation, like, subject that you could pursue. And at that time I was like, well, I just want to take a break, because this was, like, rough. It was a rough 2 years. And so, you know, the 2 years have now turned into 6 years. So I'm like, let's not make it another 15.
That's okay.
But better late than never is what I say.
Definitely.
Better late than never. I don't want to be at the end of my life and say, oh, you never became a doctor.
Can't put that DRA at your tombstone, your headstone.
No, I did tell my kids that they're going to have to call me Dr. Mom.
Yeah? Good.
Like, Dr. Mama.
As they should.
Told my husband it's going to be Dr. and Mr.
Yeah, no, that was real, though. Yes. It's like, that's okay. I'm not even gonna go into, like, the fact that, like, people would think if they see doctor, they'll be like, "Oh, is the husband the doctor?" It's like, no, it's me,
Doctor Mister.
Is the doctor going under your maiden name, or is it going under his last name?
Well, his last name is her last name, so I mean, that's fair.
It's actually under both, because my bachelor's degree is both my last name and his last name, or our last name, and then my master's degree is the same. Actually, because, like, as a Hispanic woman, like, I want to give credit to that lineage, but then also, like, he's been my family for, you know,
for years,
for most of my life, for over half of my life.
I mean, through your bachelor's and your master's,
and I wouldn't be here without.
Like,
literally, when it came time for my graduation for my master's degree, now we had some, like, unforeseen family circumstances where I didn't end up going to the graduation. But at the beginning, it was like you only got 4 tickets to the graduation, and I'm like, I need 5. Like, I cannot go to this graduation without my husband and all of my children.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's more than your family.
Because, like, we got this degree together. Like, my husband stepped in and did so many things so that I could study. Like, there were times, literally, that I had my youngest on FaceTime with my mom on the iPad, and, like, they were, like, entertaining each other while we're writing a paper. Like, or, you know, I have textbooks that I have hung on to because as I'm reading and highlighting in yellow over here, they're drawing pictures and highlighting in green over here. Like, we did this degree together, and I was like, I can't go. We can't all go together.
Right. So, I mean, like, even as the last names, like, you put your last name as lineage, but you also put your married last name because that is who you did it with, like how you got there.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if it wasn't for my family of origin, like I wouldn't be where I am today. If my dad hadn't immigrated to this country and sacrificed, and like now as an adult, when I'm hearing some of his stories and stuff, I'm like, man, like I don't know that I could do that. Like to pick up and move to a foreign country like, when you don't know anybody and just like you just get a job and find a place to live and so like that is like an honor to like my family of origin, but then also the family that I've created too.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, Sam, did you have anything else?
No, we're good.
Go ahead.
No,
did you want to anything you left out? Anything you wanted to say? Last question's gonna be, obviously you know what the podcast is about, following your dreams and whatnot. So, words of advice, tips, tricks. You have a little bit more experience.
I feel like I've spent so much time listening to y'all's podcasts, and I was like, oh yeah, this and this. I'll think of a million things to say on my way home.
Oh, but now it's
like on the spot. And I'm a preparer because I don't know if Ashley told you, but I texted her yesterday and I'm like, hey, what's the subject?
Shoulder.
So do I need to prepare? Like, do I need to study or?
No, this is we want it. And that's what I told Ashley. I was like, nah, we're just having a conversation, I just want to get to know you, see how you are,
Yeah.
And you get to see a different side of me now too.
Yeah, I know. I learned a lot. The last thing would be is obviously you still have your PhD to pursue.
Yes.
Right. So anybody who is thinking about going to school or thinking about pursuing their dreams, like what are you gonna tell them? You have more experience following your dreams than we do.
Dreams are different to different people.
Yep.
We all have different dreams, and what might be a small dream to you might be a big dream to me. So my first thing is always never compare your goals or your dreams to somebody else's, because I think it's really easy, especially in this age of social media, to start comparing ourselves to others. And so my first thing is always, you can look at that maybe for motivation, but when that comparison gets harmful to yourself, you have to just shut it off. So the first thing is always not to negatively compare yourself to somebody else's dreams or where they are in life. And then the second part is always, it's never going to be 100% easy. If it is, then it really wasn't a dream or a goal where you had to kind of sacrifice or stretch a little bit. And so it's not going to be easy, and things that are really worth it usually aren't super easy. And so the important thing is to remember that you have to just get up and keep trying. I'll never forget something that my youngest said. She made this little picture one time and she was like 6, and she's like, life is like a burrito. You have to figure out how to eat it without making a mess.
I love that.
That's so cute.
It's also you. This is going into the burrito thing, right? You put the stuff in there neat and nice, and then once you wrap it all up, it just got all tangled. But hey,
it all ends up in your stomach. It all ends up in your stomach a mess anyway. The other thing that we have picked up on, and as somebody who has struggled with my weight most of my life, and now I have teenage girls, so I have to be very careful with what I say around them. But I apparently have not done a good enough job about like not beating up on myself for not losing weight. But anyway, we have, there was a movie, it was a Disney movie that came out, and there was a scene where the one kid is telling the other kid, like, whenever you're like thinking bad on yourself or you're like beating yourself up, you just say "Silencio Bruno," right? Like that's how you shut the negativity off. And so that literally has become like a catchphrase in our family. And so that's the other thing that I think about when I start going, oh, can I do this? Is it too late? Or
shut that off.
Do I really want to spend the next 5 years in this chaos of work and home and school? I just go, Silencio Bruno. You just have to like dig in and just keep going. It's not going to be easy. Other people are going to have it easier than you do, and then there are other people that are going to look at you and go, man, I wish I had it as easy as she does or he does. And so, always have to just not compare yourself, and then just keep moving forward, whatever that forward is. You may not even know what you're working towards at one point, but you just keep moving forward.
Love it. All right, well, Sam, finish us off.
Me? What?
Yeah, I'm gonna make her get up from you.
You should have prepared me for that. So Lupe, just thank you for coming in and talking to us and
Thank
sharing your
you.
story. We appreciate it. I love your words of wisdom. Definitely needed it this week. I have been struggling.
Oh yeah,
So
with school.
appreciate it 100%. And hopefully we get to have you back. We'll check in with you, see how that PhD is going for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
It
gonna
might be
have to have that. Yeah, be pursuing that PhD.
an online graduation party in a few years.
Yeah, we'll do it. Sponsored by Aquí Soñamos.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I said since I didn't get to celebrate my master's degree, like
Go
I'm
all out for that
going all out
PhD.
for the PhD.
As you should.
Absolutely.
Definitely going all out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for listening to Aquí Soñamos. Thank you,
Yes.
Sam. Thank you, Lupe. If you guys want to be on the show, send us an email. Get us on Instagram, Aquí Soñamos. And subscribe to the podcast and YouTube.
Yeah.
Anything else, anybody?
Nope.
No, we're
No,
good to
Sam?
go.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.